Welcome to the grades training for Brightspace. So my name is May Coulson and I am one of the faculty champions at Wright College. So this video tutorial hopefully will prepare you for how to use the gradebook. So most of you, if you're watching this video, hopefully you have figured out how to access Brightspace. Again, you can log in through your My CCC page and log in with your regular CCC credentials, your email address, and then your password. And then you will click on the icon that says Brightspace. So we're going to get started with going into our sandbox. So most of you should have completed the basic foundations training already. So what we're going to do here in my brief tutorial is go over some basics on how to use the gradebook. So you have, hopefully you have reached your sandbox, and so you know the various different tabs here on the nav bar. You will go to Assessments, click down and look for Grades, okay? So once you reach Grades, you will then open this section. Now, most of you in your sandboxes will not have students' names listed. As a faculty champion, I do have a dummy student, a demo student, so most of you will not have any names listed for students that are enrolled in your sandbox course. However, for your actual courses that you will have, and I can give an example very quickly, I will show you my current course that I am currently teaching. As I'm making this video. This is fall 2018. So I will go into my actual course. I will go to the same area, Assessments, go into my Gradebook, Grades, and you will see that my students' names are listed here alphabetically. I'm not going to stay too long on this screen simply because these are current students and I do not want their information compromised. I will return to my sandbox to show you how to set up your gradebook for your courses. Again, you can always set up your materials in your sandbox, and future trainings and videos will show you how to export from your sandbox into your actual Brightspace course, that live course as I like to call it. So you will start here. Usually the default is always this screen where it says enter grades. So you will have your students and your various different grade items. We will get to that part in a moment. We're going to first go to the setup wizard. And so when you set up your gradebook, it is recommended that you start with the setup wizard. So that is the setup wizard, and it will go through what your current settings are. As I scroll down through here, you will see that I have already set up this gradebook many times, but for many of you, this may be the first time that you are setting up your gradebook. So these are my current settings right now. So I'm going to change these, obviously, for the duration of this video tutorial. So you always click on Start, basically same as we would have done in Blackboard. So you can choose what kind of grading system you want. Now, the default for most instructors will be point system. So there are some instructors that may choose a weighted system. However, for the purpose of this tutorial, I am going to show a point system. If you also noted that if you click on any of the question marks, it will always drop down with an information explanation. Sometimes the explanation may not be as sufficient as you would like. You can always go back to Help up here on your navigation bar and get some more information. Okay, so and again, the general default is always the point system. So I will hit continue to move on to the next grade setup icon. And what we have here is final grade. Now, your grade book, what it essentially does is in the background, it's always calculating grades. This is a little bit different than how Blackboard operated. In my opinion, I find this a little bit better, but again, this is just my opinion. In this setup, you want to decide whether you want to show the students their calculated grade every single time they log in and check the grade book. Now, this is always going to be a question that you need to decide. Now, a lot of times the default is adjusted final grade. That means that you as the instructor, as you can read here, is modifying the grade before the students see them. Now, in terms of Brightspace determines final grade is not a letter grade. Basically, these are the points that the students are viewing as they're looking at, their grades. So a lot of faculty sometimes like to let students know, hey, this is how you're doing in the course. Go into your Brightspace course and look for the grades, and they can know how they are doing in the course. So this sometimes can help when you have lots of students asking questions about how am I doing in the course. That helps. Now, if you don't want to do that, meaning that you release that calculated score every single time, you can always just click on the adjusted final grade. That means that you modify things before they see their final cumulative, their points all at the end, is what I meant. Now, this automatically release final grade, basically once you have, calculated your grades, the students will see them. Now, if you are like myself, I do everything via, my students are alphabetical from, last name alphabetical, A through Z. So generally, if I have lots of students that I'm working with or doing their grade calculation, I don't want to let students with their letter alphabet who starts the beginning, letter A last name, to see their grade before a person who has letter Z as their last name. So then you don't worry about everybody seeing their grade all at once. So again, these are your personal preferences. I normally default to adjusted final grade, and I do not click on automatically release final grade. That means that students cannot see their final grade until I select that option. So again, we will continue. Now, this one for grade calculation. So essentially, you may do as what I have done, which is to set up my gradebook in advance each semester. My courses generally have the same assessments each and every semester, so my gradebook is pretty much the same semester to semester. So since I do that, I usually will have this drop ungraded items, because if I treat ungraded items as 0, the students will see that they have received zeros for future assessments that they have not completed, and that gets into issues. So again, if you're not clear on what that means, then you can click on the question mark icon and it will give a brief explanation. So again, I use this as so that the students do not receive zeros for any ungraded items that I have already set up in my gradebook. The other thing I also is I select automatically keep final grade updated, but keep in mind that this is happening in the background. Students do not see their final percentages, their grade totals. That's what Brightspace is referring to. The final grade is basically their point totals in this case. Okay, moving on. So the default is always going to be percentage. This is a default that most faculty are comfortable with. If you change anything else, I don't think we're allowed to at this point. So the default is always going to be a percentage. So, and it does show a score, so you can see, if you work on a point system. But this is how Brightspace is a default is always percentage. We unfortunately at this point cannot change this. Moving on. So you can change. You can also change how many decimal spots you want to display. The default is 2. I believe that, you know, again, whole numbers and then decimal places afterwards. Again, if there are questions, click on this and it will explain. Again, continuing to next step. So students will see. Students will see the points. They'll also see a symbol. So the symbol is basically is a grade item. This is, again, a default. I usually leave it clicked. The grade scheme color, it just shows a different color. I believe that red, is failing or something like that. Again, these are all things that are just sort of visual for the student. So if you want to click all 3, that usually is the default. Again, number of decimal places, they see 2. If you have text items, minimum is 50 letters. If you have, you can put, 2 characters or less, I think. And again, final grade calculation, you do not want that checked at this point. If you do check it, students will see it immediately. So again, continuing on. This is your final check. This is what you have done to set up the gradebook. So this is your setup. This is what you did. Now, you can always go back and you can click on finish. You can go back to previous steps in your setup. Then if you want to make a correction somewhere. I'm going to hit continue. Again, this is just a summary of what you did. And again, you hit finish. Again, you can now move on to set up a grade item. So we can set up various different things. I'm going to review just the first 2 today in this tutorial, creating a new grade item and then creating a new grade category. Those are the 2 things that I will review in this tutorial. These other items, I am sure that in the future, and even Brightspace itself has other tutorials on how to import grades, and these various other items. So the point of this tutorial is only to go over these 2, grade item and category. So we're going ahead, and I am going to go ahead and create a new grade item. So when you create a new grade item, again, you have various different ways of doing this. The default is always numeric. So out of how many points? Is it out of 10 points? The students can earn, from 0 to 10 points. We can do a select box. Again, this is something that I do not use personally. Pass-fail is also something that's another option. Formula, and then calculated or text. Now, for some advanced learners, or advanced users, you can use a calculated formula to calculate their midterm grade. And so I have done that using Brightspace this current semester. Again, for the purpose of the video, I will not share how I did that with my students, primarily because this video is going to be public, and I do not want to compromise my students' information. But for most of you that are doing this as you are learning how to use the gradebook, you can pretty much figure this out. This is very self-explanatory. Again, I will be giving trainings, face-to-face trainings in the future, in probably starting the first month of January 2019. So you probably would like to come to those. Again, the reason I'm not showing you calculated is because I would have to use actual students that are currently enrolled in my courses, and that would compromise their information. So moving on, I'm going to, again, there are various different choices. So I'm going to select numeric, which is the most common. So we have 3, tabs that we're going to go through. So first is always properties. Anything with an asterisk means that you have to fill in this content. So I'm going to put down here assignment 1A, okay? Again, for the short name, it's not necessary. If you wanted to put a short name, I think this is optional. I have not used the short name. That is entirely up to you. For category, right now, the default is always none. So I will show you how to create a new category. But if you had already created a category in previous, you can always put it in that category. So within this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to set up a category. So we're going to click on New Category. You will see a new pop-up box appear, and we're going to call this category Assignments. Okay? And again, you don't have to put a short name. Now, grading. Now, how do you want this to appear? So we're going to go through this twice. So first of all, if you're treating these as extra credit assignments, you can also have a category that says extra credit. So why don't we do that for the purpose? So if you click Can Exceed, this means that you're going to give them more than the points that you originally had assigned. And again, if you're not clear, you can look at this information tab. So for example here, if the point total is actually only counting for 20, but you give your student 22 points, then obviously this will not, this will override the total points, okay? You can choose to make this extra credit. If you choose to make this extra credit, you want to exclude it from final grade calculation. Now, why do you want to do that? So again, if you treat this as extra credit, students will not be penalized for not completing the assignment. Now, if students decide that, if you decide, that is, again, back to my, when we set up the gradebook, the setup, that's why we sometimes don't release the final grade, we release the final adjusted grade because of this factor. So because I've titled this extra credit assignments, I am going to exclude it from final grade calculation simply because I'm treating this as extra credit. So I will click on that. Also, you can decide how you want to distribute this category. Are you going to make all the assignments worth the same number of points? If you decide to do that, let's do that for the sake of this video. Now, the default for the points is always 10, but let's say that you made every assignment 25 points. So that means that you are treating every assignment in this category 25 points. Now, again, even though we are treating this as extra credit, you can decide to drop the lowest or the highest items, okay? Now, it's very rare for instructors to drop the highest score. So let's say you have a student that received 25 points on everything or 26 points on everything. That means you're going to drop those 26 points. However, most instructors drop the lowest grade item. So that would probably be the 0 or the less than 25, however you want to decide. Since I'm not dropping anything for now, I'm going to leave these blank. Again, if there are questions about this, you can click on the question icon. So since we are finished with the category, we're going to hit save. Now, since I have put this into assignments as extra credit, since I made this an equal distribution, this is showing already I cannot change the maximum points. It has to be 25. However, I can still click on the Can Exceed. So I still can click on that. Now, I'm not quite sure the difference between bonus and exclude from. Generally, if you're going to treat this as a bonus, it has to also be excluding from final grade calculation. So again, if you click on this, it explains what the bonus means. And then you can also click on the exclude from final grade calculation, which is basically that you're not going to count it against the student if they do not complete the assignment. Okay, so we're going to treat that. If you have rubrics for your grade items for any assignment that you give your class, that will be discussed in a future training. Hopefully, we will have some more better experts at setting up rubrics. Again, those are for future training. So again, if you want to play with setting up rubrics, you are certainly welcome to do that, and it allows you to create rubrics. Okay. So, so we can continue going down. Display items. So this is what students will see. Generally speaking, if you want students to see how they compare to their classmates, you can click on this. I generally leave this unchecked. Display grade distribution. If you want your students to view how they did, the bell-shaped curve, again, you can click on that. I don't check on any of these because I don't want students to see this information. You can also override the display items. That's also an option. So I'm going to hide this because I'm not using these. So basically I'm finished with setting up the properties, the general properties. Now you can always click on save, and that will just tell you that you've saved your entries. Okay, you can click on save and close, and then it will close the entire window. So if you click on save and close, again, now it just returns you back to the gradebook. Okay, now you notice there are two different tabs. This is the enter grades tab where we started, and that shows where you can enter the students. If you go to manage grades, okay, you will see all the grade items. Okay, so if you notice here, because of the trainings that I've been conducting, I have several items that I've linked here. So again, I recommend it is that you play with your gradebook and play with your sandbox so that you can get more comfortable. But we're not quite finished with this tutorial, so I want to share one more thing. I wasn't quite finished, so I want to go back and edit. Okay, so I can click on, so I looked for my assignment that I created. You click on this drop down tab and you click on edit grade item. So here we go back to where we started, and I want to go to restrictions. So restrictions are the next item. So the default is that this grade item is always visible to you as the instructor and you as the student, as students. If you decide to hide this grade item, the students will not see it, but you as the instructor will. If you decide to select that this item is only visible for a specific date range, then you can select when students see it and when students will not be able to see it. Okay, so if I choose the hide this grade item, and I will show for the purpose of this video what happens. So I'm going to hit save and close. So I'm going to scroll down to my assignment that the grade item that I created, and you'll see this little hidden icon. Okay, so this means that the item is hidden from students, but you as instructor will still be able to view this item. So let me go back to edit this grade item and go back to restrictions. And I think I'm going to make the item visible. So I will leave that. I'll correct that. Release conditions is another advanced training tutorial. Again, Brightspace D2L has other videos that will talk more about that. As we continue moving forward with Brightspace, I am sure we will develop our own tutorials for how to figure out some of this information. So I'm going to leave this blank for now. And then the next tab, and I want to share with this, if you move from one tab to the next, it automatically saves what you did in the previous tab. So you noted that this little pop-up said save successfully. So whatever I did in restrictions was already saved. So again, these objectives are learning objectives. If there are faculty that use learning objectives to associate with grades or with assessments, then this is where you would input it. Okay, so again, since this assignment and since these are more advanced training, I will not go through learning objectives. But again, this is an opportunity for those of you that are transitioning, as we are transitioning from Blackboard to Brightspace, to again play in your sandbox and try to figure things out. So we are finished with this Gradebook tutorial. I'm going to hit save and close, and that brings me back to my Gradebook. So again, I hope this tutorial was helpful, in that we learned a little bit about how to use the grade tool in Brightspace. Again, if there are more questions, hopefully we will have some more opportunities, workshops, face-to-face, and again, your Brightspace training team will hopefully be able to help you. Maureen, of course, will always be available, and so hopefully this tutorial helps.